morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, and welcome back to another video. Stats, types, move pools, these are all factors that go into deciding what makes a Pokemon actually good in a competitive sense. But in Generation 3, Game Freak added a little secret sauce that further served to make or break a Pokemon: abilities. Most abilities are pretty middle of the road and don't make a huge difference on how good the Pokemon are. Especially in the earlier generations where we had stuff like Tangled Feet and Damp. These abilities don't explicitly make their users worse, but more often than not, they're not really doing anything. Then you have some like Intimidate that take decent Pokemon like Arcanine or Gyarados and really elevates it to the next level. But beyond that, you have abilities that are the Pokemon itself. Abilities that are pretty much the only reason why the Pokemon functions in a competitive space. An overly extreme example is Shedinja, a Pokemon with only 1 HP that should always die to a hit no matter what. Except there's one caveat. Its special ability, Wonder Guard, making it immune to 13 of Pokemon's 18 types, and transforms Shedinja into the ultimate gimmick Pokemon. But Shedinja is a rare case of a Pokemon that was pretty much designed around its ability, not the other way around. So let's take a look at some more Pokemon who were completely useless but became amazing because of a certain ability. How about our thumbnail Pokemon, Serperior? When Serperior first came out in Gen 5, and I cannot stress this enough, this Pokemon was pee-pee, poo-poo, stinky garbage. It's just kinda fast and can maybe set up with Calm Mind or Coil to pull off an unlikely late game sweep. I say late game because you'll definitely need to take out any Pokemon in your opponent's team who resists grass or whatever hidden power you're running, because it's virtually all this Pokemon gets in terms of usable attacks. But after 3 long years of waiting, Gen 6 would finally unleash the hidden ability that we'd all been waiting for: Contrary. Contrary is an ability that flips the stat changes your Pokemon would normally get. So Intimidate actually raises Serperior's attack instead of lowering it. Not that it matters, because you only need Contrary to work with one move on Serperior's set, Leaf Storm. This makes it so Serperior can not only spam a base 140 power attack every turn, but it also gains a nasty plot boost upon every usage. This one ability paired with this one move single-handedly catapulted Serperior from the trenches to the top overnight. And it has stayed there every generation since, cementing it as one of the strongest starter Pokemon of all time. A feat I'm sure nobody saw coming back in 2011. And it's not like Serperior's moveset has gotten much better over time. Sure, Glare got buffed as a good utility move, but more often than not, Serperior is just using Leaf Storm and whatever Terra Blast you're running, which is just the new age hidden power. Serperior may be a one-trick snake, but that's literally all it needs to be great. The same can be said for other Contrary users like Malamar and Lurantis, who pretty much have no redeeming qualities to them other than this ability. The main difference between them and Serperior, though, is that they still kinda suck even with this ability. They basically just want to spam superpower, and that's it. Pretty much nothing else these guys will do is effective. And even then, superpower doesn't hit nearly as hard as a stab Leaf Storm from Serperior. The next Pokemon on my list is a bit of a sleeper pick, but hear me out on this one, a Rockrunnid. Now, sure, a Rockrunnid isn't tearing up the OU ladder like our pal Serperior here, or being used by every VGC player in the world. Far from it, actually. But a Rockrunnid does have one thing going for it in its ability, Water Bubble, which is essentially 3 abilities rolled into one. This ability doubles the power of its water moves, prevents it from being burned, and gives it extra resistance to fire. Most notably, this means that a Rockrunnid can fire off a base 170 power liquidation without the threat of getting Will-O-Wisped, which is nothing to scoff at. Despite all this, yeah, a Rockrunnid still isn't great, but it's at least usable. Whereas without this ability, I doubt most players would touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. And I can't blame them. As an arachnophobic person myself, it is kinda creepy looking. I might just smack it with the pole instead. Up next is an ability that, like Contrary, puts many Pokemon on the map, Prankster. Granting priority to every status move in the game, this ability is especially useful in VGC to cripple multiple Pokemon at once. And the value of this ability was on full display at the beginning of Scarlet and Violet's VGC meta, when an absolute murder of Murkrow took over the competitive landscape, seeing usage on roughly 15% of teams according to Pikalytics. Why? Well, not only can Murkrow use Eviolite thanks to the existence of its evolution Honchkrow, but Murkrow also gets Prankster while Honchkrow doesn't, making one of the few Pokemon who is just almost always better than its evolution. You take away Prankster and both of these guys are standing in the unemployment line. One other Pokemon that falls into the same category would be Clefairy, who gets an extremely rare but useful ability, Friend Guard, which reduces damage done to teammates by 25%. This ability is intentionally only given to pretty bad Pokemon who aren't fully evolved like Happiny and Jigglypuff, but Clefairy actually makes it work pretty well, as it has just high enough defenses to be considered a viable Eviolite user. And between moves like Helping Hand, Encore, and Follow Me, it actually carves out a pretty decent niche as a support Pokemon, which I bet is something that Game Freak definitely didn't see coming. While we're on the topic of VGC though, we may as well talk about Gastrodon, who has seen a pretty consistent amount of medium to high usage in VGC for several generations now, and the only real reason for that is its ability Storm Drain, an ability that draws in and absorbs all water moves in the field, converting them to a special attack buff. The reason why I can say with certainty that Gastrodon is carried by this ability is because it's almost directly comparable to other water ground types, Seismitoad and Whiscash. The three of these Pokemon are built almost exactly the same way stat-wise, and they all have nearly identical move pools to boot. Heck, if anything, Seismitoad is arguably better on paper than Gastrodon is, since it gets access to way more moves and has overall higher stats. But the one thing that Gastrodon has that they don't? Recover. Yeah, it's a pretty good move to have. But yeah, Storm Drain, also that. This is a video about abilities. On the topic of water ground types though, Gastrodon is not the only one using its ability to rizz up the crowd. I apologize for that statement. Because Quagsire also fits the bill with its hidden ability Unaware, preventing other Pokemon from setting up in front of it. It shares this extremely good ability with its Paldean brethren, Clodsire, who also has Water Absorb to negate its weakness to water. Both of these abilities just serve to make Clodsire even bulkier than it already is, so both are great picks to go with. Hey there, just popping in to say that most people watching aren't subbed, so if you're enjoying the video, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. Thanks! Another Pokemon who actually became usable thanks to its hidden ability is Ditto. When Imposter was added in Gen 5, it allowed Ditto to transform right away at the start of battle without burning a turn to use Transform. This is assuming that Ditto even lives a full turn to use Transform to begin with, seeing as how bad its stats are. Honestly, it's a bit hard to remember that Limber is even Ditto's primary ability because any Ditto without Imposter just gets cast off to the void immediately. Although this ability did have the unintended effect of making Ditto's signature items, Quick Powder and Metal Powder, completely obsolete, as these only activate when Ditto isn't transformed. Now we've talked a lot about how powerful weather setting abilities are in Pokemon, especially when it comes to guys like Ninetales, Politoed, Torkoal, and Pelipper, who all somehow have the same mythical powers as Groudon and Kyogre. Don't ask me how that makes any canonical sense, but whatever. Anyway, we're not here to talk about them, because everybody already knows how good they are. So, how about terrain setters? Rillaboom falls into a similar category as Superior, where its hidden ability Grassy Surge, combined with one other attack, that being Grassy Glide, pretty much turned this thing into an obnoxious one-button Pokemon. Even after Grassy Glide took a pretty substantial nerf in Gen 9, Rillaboom still mows more lines than Hank Hill on a weekly basis. And it's one of the rare examples where I'd say a Pokemon is carried by its ability in both singles and doubles. With both Stab and Grassy Terrain accounted for, Rillaboom can just throw the base 107 power quick attack like it's nothing. Outside of Grassy Surge, we also have Electric Surge, and the only Pokemon that belongs to, outside of Tapu Koko, is Pincurchin. Is Pincurchin nearly as good as Rillaboom? No, but if Electric Surge didn't exist on this thing, then I'm fairly certain that most of us wouldn't even remember this thing exists. I know, because this is my go-to guy on Pokédoku every week for electric types. But now that I've said that, I should probably go with somebody else. As for our other notable terrain setter, look no further than Indeedee with Psychic Surge. Yet another Pokemon who is probably only remembered for its ability. Let's just be honest here. Even in the current metagame, Indeedee holds strong at around 10 to 15% usage. Not only can it set up Psychic Terrain for its teammates, but the female version in particular can become quite bulky by activating its own Psychic Seeds item, and even deal substantial damage with Expanding Force or Psychic. The last terrain setter is a bit of an odd case though, because its hidden ability Misty Surge is actually completely outclassed by its main ability. Of course, I'm talking about Galarian Weezing, and by extension, its Cantonian counterpart. Weezing has almost always been an underwhelming Pokemon, and if you play singles, then it still is. Nothing has changed. But in doubles at least, Sword and Shield granted Weezing an incredible buff of Neutralizing Gas, an ability that cancels out every other ability on the field. I know, you might be thinking, JPR, we've all eaten at Arby's. What's so special about Neutralizing Gas? This means that Weezing can be used both as a tool to shut down opponents' strategies that involve weather, terrain, or simply abusing Intimidate, or it can be paired with teammates like Regigigas or Slacking who normally have terrible abilities to make them actually good. And for our last Pokemon of the video, I want to talk about a little guy whose ability makes so much difference, it basically is the Pokemon. And that is Terapagos, with its ability Terra Shift, which basically just transforms it from the baby form into the shell form at the start of any battle. Even auto battles, for that matter, where abilities shouldn't activate at all. This is actually one of the only abilities that can't be turned off by Neutralizing Gas or any other means of suppressing abilities. Which honestly makes me wonder why the baby form is even a thing at all aside from just to look cute and sell toys. Actually, that's probably the only reason. But yeah, why go through all the work to give it completely different stats if this form isn't even usable? Game Freak just seems to love creating extra work for themselves sometimes. But that's just a few examples of Pokemon who would be really bad, but their abilities carry them harder than their mamas. What are some other examples you can think of? Let me know in the comments down below. But don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.